Welcome to Rooster Strategic Solutions Wake Up Webcast. First ever, and hopefully the first of many, but we'll see how this one goes. The purpose of a Wake Up Webcast like this is to create conversation around key digital media and marketing tactics, and to share expert opinions on a variety of topics. Ultimately, we want to begin filling that knowledge gap that exists in the industry around all these topics. Our panelists are encouraged to be daring, but reasoned and always courteous, even when there's disagreement. And there should be, as it relates to digital, because it's ever moving, ever changing. Now, just a few webcast details. We are recording this. If you are attending, great, because you can be a part of the Q&A live. If you aren't, we are recording it, so you can be a part of that one way or another. We'll use the chat functions for the Q&A. And so as we go through, use the chat functions to get your thoughts through. And also, there will be highlights from this shared probably through social, through many means, until our next event. Because we expect that a lot of this is going to be useful, hopefully beyond just the group that's here. My name is James Arnold. I'm the Chief Digital Officer for Rooster Strategic Solutions. Many of you know me. If you don't, I've spent 20 years in ag publishing on the digital side. It was about 6 years at Advanced Publishing and then another 13 with Farm Journal. I was a sales guy, operations guy, manager of a digital team, creator of numerous million-dollar products, but mostly I was a proponent of digital marketing and sales tools in agriculture. I have a couple of panelists here. I'll introduce the first is Craig Dick, VP of Marketing and Growth for CropStream, the agribusiness messaging network. Craig's been a vocal digital evangelist. In his current role, he's not new to ag or digital. He was director of wholesale at Midwestern BioAg, key to launching Terra New fertilizer. Prior to that, he was VP of Sales and Marketing at Calcium Products and oversaw 30x growth utilizing blogging and social media back in 2008. And he started his career at Machinery Link. He wrote his first blog back in 2002. Hey, Craig, you're an aggressive communicator on LinkedIn, certainly about mobile, but also about social media and where it sits today. What's your current take on social media in agriculture?
I think social media has a lot of benefits, but somebody that's been in it from really the start of it, it's changed a lot. Today, it's very crowded. The algorithms change quite a bit, and it is becoming harder and harder and more expensive to reach the people you want to reach. And so, from my perspective, if I were to talk to a smaller business owner today about getting started in social media, I might question whether that's where he should spend his time. If you haven't been in it at this point, you might be too late.
All right. I'm sure we'll talk more about social as we go along. On the mobile front, we know farmers are leading adopters of mobile technology, but what are they doing in mobile?
So farmers on mobile, it's pretty interesting. Most of them have a smartphone. Most of them are texting. In fact, almost all of them, they consume a lot of their content on mobile. But what's interesting, what we found is not many have email, or if they do have email, they don't check it regularly. And I'm kind of surprised that we haven't seen as many growers on social media as what we would expect to see. So it seems like they're all using texting, they're all using some type of messaging as really their go-to way to communicate.
Okay, we'll definitely get back to that topic as well. But let me introduce Sean. Sean Cotton is president and co-founder. Is that Koigi?
Yeah, it's Koigi. Yeah, so It's a Latin word for to bring together, and specifically in bringing together a tech stack, which I think we'll talk a little bit more about a little bit more later.
Beautiful. Coagi. Let's all say it right. Sorry about that. Sean,
Absolutely.
he comes out of the agency world. He spent 6 years at True Media and serving as VP of Digital. He also has added academia to his resume, serving as an adjunct professor at the University of Missouri. Sean is across the pond, as they say, so thank you for making it. Targetable and usable farmer data is the talk of the industry, but what are your keys to working with it effectively?
That's a great question, James. And actually, I just had this conversation the other day with an individual in the publishing industry, and it really starts with looking at the source of the data and how deterministic is it. And so there's always been a lot of value around being able to reach specific growers, specific farmers. And oftentimes that was based upon sometimes the content that they were viewing on endemic websites. Sometimes it was based upon e-newsletters that they had signed up for about a certain area in agriculture, surveys that they had filled out for publishers. Um, and those were certainly more targeted than, say, some of the standard targeting that was used for consumers. But over the past five, 5 years, certainly, um, there have been various data companies that have started, that have started to make a name for themselves with developing these really deep profiles on growers, on farmers and ranchers, as far as how much land they farm, how much livestock they have, even gross farm income, crop types, and so forth. And so leveraging those data sources as well uh, is a very strong play. It's almost like having it's second party data. It's the closest thing you can have to your own people in your own database. And so having that balance, right, of second party data, whether it's from publishers or trade organizations or from data companies, and then a mix of contextual with that is generally the best approach today when it comes to targeting in the ag space.
Yeah, we'll definitely get more on that. But once you have that right target, that right data set, you also have to have the right messaging too, right?
Absolutely. So, and actually, in some cases, the messaging makes even a bigger impact than the targeting. You have to reach the right person, but if you reach them with the wrong message, it could actually have a negative effect. And so it's very important to pair that message. A lot of that goes into the structure and planning of digital campaigns so that you can pair up the right message with the right target. There's also technology available for personalization that can make that whole process a lot easier, but sometimes there's a reluctance to use some of that because, especially in the creative process, advertisers want to feel like they have control over what the creative is going to feel and look like, and automating that seems like it's going to take that control away, but it's actually not. It's simply going to create efficiencies.
Cool, cool. Yeah, thank you. Now I'm gonna launch a poll. We're gonna go into our roundtables part. Please take advantage of the voting. What topic area would you like most covered? We obviously came with our own, but if you have a moment, you can vote. But we'll kick off now that we've met Craig and Sean. Our roundtable discussion is going to be on a variety of topics. Don't worry, we'll listen in on the discuss. You can listen in on our discussion while we are addressing many of these topics in digital marketing now. Use the tool to put forth your own and also vote on what you'd like us to talk about. First, I want to talk about ad fraud, and maybe I'll point this first at Sean. Are we winning the war, and is it even winnable?
That's a great question. So I've written and spoken about this topic at length for a number of years, and as some others, throughout the industry. And certain studies in eMarketer and studies from some of the fraud monitoring services are showing that fraud is decreasing for those who are taking it seriously, for those who are implementing the proper safeguards, the proper monitoring systems, um, optimizing or, setting the right KPIs, because, optimizing to click-through rate, for instance, can invite fraud if that's your sole KPI. So the marketers that have adopted these best practices are, quote, winning the war, in a sense, in that they're making progress. It would be very unusual for marketers that are doing that to have more than 3 to 4% fraud. Often can achieve less than 1% fraud. So, but the problem is that in the hectic nature of the digital marketing industry, sometimes the fast pace of it, of handing off to various vendors and not having full transparency, or not having the tech in place to do the appropriate monitoring, that things can slip through the cracks, right? And so there's still some work to go, but there's certainly a lot more also awareness of the problem now, and I think marketers are going to continue to educate themselves on how they can, protect their impressions.
You dig into the stack a little bit, and there are a lot of ad fraud vendors out there right now that are being used, of various ilk. I know I've run into a few of them. You hook up with a few of them. It's good for reporting, but isn't it more important that it's like optimizing on the fly against fraud? Right? It's not about the.
Yeah, you could play a game of whack-a-mole, right? Just relying on those guys to identify fraudulent domains, and then you're going in and blacklisting them. That being said, they're important for monitoring, right? But there's best practices that need to be adopted to where you're not even bidding on fraudulent inventory in the first place, or if you are, it's at an ever decreasing rate. And those fraud monitoring systems are a method to help you see that you're taking the right steps. There's various points of view as to if, it's even in the best interest of some of these ad tech services to monitor fraud to eliminate it, because it would take away their line of revenue. So you certainly can't just put all your eggs in that basket.
Right. We have a couple of questions, lots of good feedback. Ad fraud, if we were to define ad fraud, it would be the desire to have an ad be viewed by the intended target. And fraud would be anything that isn't either allowing it to be viewed or being calculated as viewed by an actual target. Sometimes bots, sometimes a real person, but impossible to see. And so, would you classify that as a correct definition there, Sean?
I would. So yeah, sometimes it'll be a bot that's generating ad impressions in the background. But to your point, certain unscrupulous vendors will run, multiple ads, 10, 20 ads in iframes of one ad unit that are running in the background. So they're generating an impression, but that ad's never seen. It's running in the background. So now, that being said, there's other times when the ad's not seen by the person due to viewability, due to the placement on the page. That's not fraud, but it is a big part of being, of ensuring that our ad budget is used effectively, is understanding how viewability plays, into the equation as well.
Yeah, viewability was a huge topic probably for the past 3-4 years in this space. Basically as a cleansing of many of the publishers, many of the sites, to get to a point where they were playing on a good playing level. And I don't think there was specific, I don't know, there wasn't an evil, wrapping of fingers, getting away with something. But I do believe that one part of ad fraud that one of our questionnaires have asked, Courtney, is it's not easy. It's not easy to increase viewability. It's not easy to control ad fraud because it takes 2, 3, sometimes 4 new vendors, and that creates latency and site speed delays that decreases viewability, decreases the ability to control it. It's really a tough game, right?
It is. You have to control your tech, right? I mean, to your point, you can't have 6 to 8 different people running scripts every time your ad loads. So you have to be smart about the tech that you're implementing. And it also goes back to best practices on even how you set up your bidding, as to what type of inventory exchanges and even whitelist of websites that you want to bid on, times of day that are more susceptible to fraud. For instance, if anyone's ever run an ad campaign and the report says, we're seeing a lot of engagement at 3 a.m. in the morning. That's really our best audience. That's probably not the case. It's probably something that needs to be looked into, as if that's real people or not.
Yeah, I ran a campaign once with a vendor, and it had I don't know 3 times the engagement rate. And if you just read the report itself, you would have thought, gosh, that's what I should be doing. But as I asked for an IP level or a geo level report, I found that there were 2 plot points, 2 server farms that were doing all the clicking.
Yeah.
And you can't look at a base report and think you got what you need.
Hey guys, how much of is this a real problem for the majority of agribusinesses? I mean, is this pretty ubiquitous across a lot of digital ads, or do these fraudulent sites target more large advertisers, like maybe a car company or somebody like that?
Well, let me grab that real quick. It will the fraud, the nasty fraud that targets a specific brand. I have witnessed some of that, and it's a tough one. So it does hit the larger brands, but just if you pull it back a little bit, this is something that all of the publishers are working against, fighting against in the space, even in agriculture. Now, just the numbers that I've heard of percentage fraud, it's one that is it's not as rough a battle on the endemic side, because it's not as deep. So if you get into, I think, tech and probably pharma, you're going to be in the 20, 25, 30% battle if you're not battling it well. On the ag side, I think 10, 15, Sean, is that about right?
It's hard to say, but yeah, if ones don't have a plan to combat it, it's going to be in double figures for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, if they don't have a strategy, it's going to be 2 digits.
Yep. So it's a real thing in agriculture for sure. Okay, let's move on onto messaging on the mobile side, because it's just blowing up. I noticed that Google's taking the reins on RCS. So RCS is the next. It's the baby child of SMS messaging. It's the next level. It's sort of the appification of mobile. And I've been really excited and in the marketplace talking about it for over a year now, and it sort of languished as the various carriers said, maybe we'll launch it, maybe not. It's just been slow. But Google took back the reins. Are we going to see adoption of something like that, Craig, or where does that RCS fit in?
Yeah, I think you will. It's been floating out there for a while. It's obviously their attempt to catch up with iMessage, and so it's basically just SMS plus. Obviously, I don't see a lot of carriers getting super excited to jump on board. It's going to take more bandwidth. It's going to fill up phones. It's going to be a hassle for them. And so I don't see, it being widely adopted, and I don't see it really being as big of a, advantage or leap forward as it's been touted, because, half the users are already doing something sort of like that. Going a little bit deeper though, our background is messaging, and people love it because it's simple to use, and it's why it's so dominant and attractive. But as we look at what it takes to provide the right level of detail and understand and address the needs of specific business vertical markets like agriculture, we think that's still going to be a huge challenge for technology like RCS. It's a challenge we deal with every day, and we've been in ag for 20 years. And so what I mean by that is, in agriculture, we have specific information we share. There's channel partners to be involved with, and the sales processes can be pretty lengthy. And so, I don't really see a normal user really distinguishing RCS, as a big advantage over SMS, because they're already using stuff like that. We obviously think messaging is a huge opportunity in agriculture. The real trick will be to implement it in a way that fits the needs of agriculture. And really that goes beyond the messaging technology itself. So we believe that it's going to be done by people with deep experience and knowledge in the industry, and that you'll see more niche messaging in networking solutions like we built with CropStream. Businesses and people, they really need that ecosystem and a set of tools to support how they work and how they're communicating.
Now, RCS is Rich Communication Service, and one of the key parts that I liked about at least its rollout is right now just SMS-based SMS messaging, even MMS to a degree. There's no analytics. There's no proof. There's sort of pretend proof that people have clicked through. There's certainly no consistent return path for an open rate of any kind. But something like CropStream, you're right, it would have a better flavor for analytics than some of the tools that SMS, RCS, MMS have allowed, or RCS actually tries to answer some of the analytics part.
Yeah, for sure. We see that as a big advantage to something like CropStream, where when you push a bulk message out to a group of your customers, you're going to see what were my open rates. Are people saving my content? Are they sharing my content? And being able to give give marketers visibility on what's working on mobile messaging, we think is huge.
Well, in our poll that launched this roundtable, trends in tech jumped out. So if you don't mind, I'm going to throw out one of my own personal favorites. I wrote an article for Executive Publisher a month ago on voice assistants and voice search. And you have Google, Facebook, Apple, and Amazon all advancing that technology. I'm a buyer. I have like 4 Alexas in my house, which is probably ridiculous. But as it relates to farming, is this going to be huge? What do you guys think?
Well, I think it is, in the sense that search is a predominant activity of the farming community. I started managing search campaigns, I think, in 2005 for the agricultural industry, and you would be amazed at the specific searches for certain types of chemicals or nitrogen application, for growing, and very, very granular searches that people were making with regards to running their business, running their farm. And voice search is only going to continue that, because in voice search, people are going to ask very specific questions. And so it's going to become more and more incumbent than it already has been to have that content in our website, or if we are on Amazon or wherever, to have our products optimized to be able to answer questions when people are looking for something specific. And then on the paid search side, understanding, really having a deep understanding of match types and long tail search words and smart creative use of dynamic keyword insertion and things like that, to be able to be relevant to these really specific searches that are going to come through voice, because you'll say an entire sentence. So that's one of the things I've been keeping an eye on in that space.
Yeah,
Thanks, Sean.
I'd second that. I think you're going to see more and more people using voice search. Today, I don't think, it's not my go-to way to get information, but it definitely would be prudent to start adjusting your SEO to match more conversational search terms, because those are typically different than what you would type to search for something.
Yeah, the trend line shows voice search outpacing, typed search, maybe sometime by next year, just because of all the technology. If you're in on search, you kind of have to be in on this voice search. It's kind of stupid today, but it's getting smarter and smarter. And the four biggest pocketbooks in digital, and for one of the four biggest pocketbooks out there, are supporting it. So for sure, that's my big play. But Sean, Craig, what's the next area to take off? You have any thoughts on other things to watch?
I'll let you go first, Sean.
Sure. Well, I don't know if it's going to take off anytime in the near future, James, but out of home has always been a big part of agricultural marketing. In the more urban areas now, we're running a lot of campaigns to where we place out of home digitally. That is, we buy those out of home spots based upon the traffic patterns of our target audience. We'll buy them through our platforms. And what that enables us to do is get all those analytics back from mobile phones as to if, when people actually went through those areas, saw that out of home, to be able to re-message them on their mobile device, to do some foot traffic attribution and so forth. So with as much as out of home has been a part of ag marketing, it'll be interesting, probably not in the near future, but as time goes on, where some of these out of home vendors go to more digital displays, on being able to insert those digitally and tie it together with mobile, which farmers are very active on. So I think that's something to keep an eye on as an emerging trend a few years from now. And more in the shorter term, I think maybe influencer marketing is something that some ag marketers are going to be looking at. There's people that are very respected in this space due to their either education or just their experience. Maybe they're a fifth or sixth generation farmer. They've lived it their entire life, as has their parent and their grandparents. And some of those individuals are being very active on social media, and their word and their comments carry a lot of value to people that follow them. So I can see, ag marketers seeking out those type of individuals, trying to have partnerships with them, try to get them to, review their brands.
Yeah, it seems like the digital version of the testimonial play, which has been a strong, creative direction in our space for a long time. But I guess influencer would take it to that next step. Craig, do you have any thoughts? Do you like out of
Yeah,
home? Do you like influencers?
I think influencers, it will also be big, and we have a unique take on it. But obviously, we do believe that messaging is the closest near term thing to take off. I mean, you've got people like Facebook publicly announcing that they believe that's the future as well. It's where they're putting their focus. And so to influencer marketing, we actually take a little bit different approach to that. Influencer marketing has kind of been a big deal for a long time. I think it'll continue to be a big deal. But when I look at it in ag, there's relatively few people with a big reach, say maybe 10K or more followers. And so, what's more, then you've got, quite a few brands that are willing to sponsor those people. So when I look at that, I think you've got a major imbalance today in supply and demand, which I think it's going to make that fairly expensive to align with some of these top influencers. So when we look at it, once you've aligned with that influencer, you've got to provide them with a way to provide content and share their audience, and that's pretty easy when it's that one-to-one relationship. But what we actually find is quite a bit more interesting is that within every business, you have that local influencer. Someone who says use this product, and the grower does without question. And there's literally thousands of them out there. And so, how do you help bring together this network of all these local influencers in a way to share information? That's really not that easy, but with our platform, we actually can enable lots of local influencers where they can get your brand content very easily and share it with their customer base. So in a way, we've taken it from, instead of spending a lot of money on one influencer, you can spend a little bit of money on a lot of influencers and actually probably end up being more effective.
Okay, let's move this conversation a little bit back to web and programmatic and talk about the tech stack. If you could have 3 items in your tech stack, Sean, what would they be?
Can I cheat and combine 2 to make it make them 1 and have 4? So
they're all gonna come together and be bought out someday. We're still in the mess of
that's right.
10, but right now, what would it be?
Well, we talked earlier about how important it is to have clean, accurate data, right? And so typically a brand or a publisher is going to have a CRM system, right, to organize and segment that data. And so certainly a CRM system, but coupled with that, I would say, a data onboarder like a LiveRamp or a technology like that. So you can actually make that actionable outside of email, or even direct mail. You can make that actionable across multiple channels. So followed by that, you need a platform that you can activate on, which would be a demand side platform, a DSP. And either managing that yourself or at least having the transparency with a partner that's managing it for you to where you can actually see the data in real time, see the analytics associated with how those users from your database or any second party data that you're pulling in are engaging with your messaging, with your, how are they converting, getting insights on your best consumers and doing lookalike modeling. That all can take place within the DSP. And then finally, I would say an analytics platform. Certainly, a lot of people rely on Google Analytics, which is a great free tool. But having an analytics platform that allows you to pull in the various sources of data into one place and look at them holistically to do even some business intelligence around geography, around time of day, around your different target audiences, so that we can make our marketing smarter moving forward and not get stuck in those silos of maybe looking at those surface level KPIs of click-through rate or CPM and things of that nature, which are always taken into consideration, but they're not really business drivers.
So as I read it, that's data plus activator, and then more data, and then more activation, and then more data, and more activation, and more data.
I asked you if I could cheat a little bit.
We keep starting from scratch every year, it seems. We don't build off of the prior data, and you're right. I think I think that analytics is so key. I feel like every year is a new year, but we've learned so much.
That's right. I mean, so we can test and learn and do the things that are working, and then we can add new things as we go along, but we don't start over every campaign with a new way and say, oh, here's this new vendor. They can have this fancy way of targeting that nobody else has, which is really just a twist on the same type of data that's available in most of the DSP platforms. So whereas if we cultivate and curate our own audiences from our first party data, our second party data sources, work with publishers that have data, we can follow them through campaign to campaign in a smart way.
Well, speaking of big things that's coming, 5G, Craig. 5G has been rolling out and it's promising the moon. But where does 5G fit today for an ag landscape?
It'll be very helpful. Certainly, better connectivity and coverage is always going to be helpful. It's going to bring better service and more opportunities to the field. But I think it's probably still a ways off for agricultural community. I know some growers that are still in really a data desert. They've got cellular dead zones. They may not even get broadband. So I'm looking at it, keeping an eye on it, but I'd be more concerned about how do we connect the people that are still unconnected.
Yeah, how long has there been governmental funding to support the rural marketplace and growing their connectivity? It's been since I've been in the business, 20 years. There's still dead zones, and it all boils down to money. It boils down to how do I get money to feed that connectivity to a handful of people when you can put millions into a 5G network and make sure LA and Chicago are good. It's just been a tough thing to watch.
I also don't see it replacing, a broadband or a dedicated line anytime soon.
Sure.
It's just you're not going to still have the volume and speed that you would get through a local fiber connection to your building.
And that same topic hits the connected TV and connected devices. The possibilities there are wonderful. I saw a chart just this week that it was mind blowing. It's the first time I've watched a digital chart that's mostly digital go away from digital and move to a TV environment. So the percentage of consumers who are using connected TVs to watch their videos has increased substantially, while display, mobile, tablet have decreased. So we know connected TVs are the thing. You can't really buy a TV that isn't. But if you don't have a connectivity, if you don't have speed, you're out of the game, right?
Yeah,
I would say absolutely. Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, I've got 3 uncles and a couple cousins that farm, and they don't even have satellite TV. It's still all over the air, and I'm sure it'll be a huge thing once growers start replacing TVs and things of that nature. But for me today, it's probably not a big place I would be looking to place advertising, just because I'm not sure how many farmers even have them out there.
Well, the scale is limited, but there are tools and vendors in our space that are offering it. But even they are admitting, this is more of a test case. Scale is very small. I don't know. I mean, you always like to play with 5% of the budget just to see what's out there. But you're right. I don't think the connectivity is bigger on a connected TV scenario than it is elsewhere.
really, I think the shift we need to do as marketers is to stop thinking about it as TV and think of it as really just another digital screen is where TV is going. You know, how many growers are actually watching, binge watching The Office on their phone and their self-driving tractor. I know a lot of guys do that. So, it's really just another, another digital outlet.
Right.
We've actually run some CTV campaigns in the agribusiness space for finance, and you're dealing with a niche audience already, so there's already going to be a scale issue. But to Craig's point, if it's in addition or supplemental to what you're doing with other forms of video, whether it's YouTube or other forms of online video, and that's a component of it, we can see a lot of effectiveness with it because we can do things such as when you need to build awareness first, the farmer can see the ad, whether it's on YouTube or whether it's on a connected TV or it's on their mobile phone, and they see that video. Then we can follow up because we're executing within the same platform. We can follow up with a native ad or with a display ad to build frequency or to increase that awareness. So to your point, James, it's something that we want to test with if we have the budget, and especially if we need awareness. It's something that's a good channel to include in the mix.
So we have a question about ag data sources, and it strikes me that this is a good venue to talk about. I came out of Farm Journal, where we're pretty proud of the data set that has been amassed since the 60s of the farm audience, and it's cultivated and cleansed annually by really smart people. But there's also farm market ID data that's out there that's actionable, and you can turn that into real powerful digital means. There's U.S. farm data that a few people are also using. Now, I know, Sean, you were talking about, there is that great endemic data set, but there's also outside data that's been collected more on the consumer side, or even first-party data from published or from clients and products. But are there other data sets out there that we should talk about here that I didn't mention?
Yeah, you mentioned a couple, U.S. farm data and farm market ID. I think on the equipment side, there's a couple of players on the equipment side that have good data. Randall Riley would come to mind.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of publicly available data in the ag space, as well, that if you have the resources, you can pull together. So to that, so yes, I mean, those are some of the places that we look to curate audiences. And earlier, it was touched on with social media on how hard it can be sometimes to reach farmers across social media or growers across social media. But when we curate those type of data sources, that is an approach that we can take for social, because rather than trying to find a needle in the haystack across Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, if we push those audiences from a live ramp into those social platforms and only target those individuals on social, we're going to see a lot of efficiency in that channel. We're going to see high engagement rates and so forth. We just have to recognize that there just may not always be the scale. It depends on how big our data set is.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when you get great data, and I do think we have pockets that we can all dig into, there was a study, I think it was about a month ago, about personalization and how publishers have gone so far on personalization and how all this great data, but they're really realizing very little revenue from it because there's so many of the, you even talked about it. There's the CRM, there's the live ramp, there's the DSP, there's the analytics platform, and they'll increase their CPM, maybe double it or put $10 override. But they're seeing, I think on average, what was it, $4 CPM increase? In the end, they're realizing almost nothing. So all that work for a pittance. So is personalization even worth it?
Yes. I mean, I think in my opinion, it certainly is. Um, a few years ago, I spoke about personalization and I used an example from a completely different industry. It was marketing, but it was completely different industry. And you remember when Coca-Cola um, put individual names on their labels for their
Mm-hmm.
bottles, right?
Yeah.
So they had all their labels, it had someone's name on it, and people would, go into the store and they're like, oh, that's my friend's name, or that's my name. And just that personalization in that sense resonated with them and made them want to buy Coke. And then they actually measured that. Their sales actually increased. So personalization just in general uh, impacts individuals. The challenge is to your point, is if it's not efficient use of if it's not efficient from a cost standpoint or from a labor resource standpoint, you lose all your benefits. So we think about what Coke did with that. Did they have somebody write that name on every single label and put it on the bottle? No, they used technology. It was programmed into a computer, and in the assembly line, it printed out all those names and attached it automatically. That's what we can do in tech if we move from a manual approach to where we're trying to assemble all these different pieces and work with them in silos, to where we put together a tech stack that's cohesive and we just stick with that. You and I were talking earlier, a common practice in digital media, and I used to do this back, back in the 2000s, late 2000s, and so forth. Is, oh, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try that, and I'm going to try this, and we'll have 5 or 6 different technologies or vendors going at the same time, and we end up cannibalizing what we're trying to do and making our work a lot harder. So it really comes back to this point. The tech is available. We just need to choose the right tech, develop a strategy around it, and stick with it. And it becomes a lot easier and more cost effective.
Yeah, not to soapbox right off of that, but the the consumer side on the programmatic space, at least, they are they are running away from the idea of 6 or 7 different vendors anymore, because the likelihood is that 2 or 3 of those are going to be full of fraud, or they're lying about the data set that's underpinning. They may be boosting their own analytics. You just have to. It's a relationship business in agriculture, and I love that. We have to get there on the programmatic side. The idea of having 4 or 5 different ag-focused programmatic vendors in the picture, it's just not okay. You got to pick the 1 or 2 that you trust and is working for you, and that's the way you have to go forward, because you just can't hold feet to the fire and trust 6 or 7 different people, different vendors that you don't really know. So
well, and to your point, James, the farther you get away from that end user, up the channel, the less questionable the more questionable your data is, and the more tricky it is to make sure it is personalized. But certainly, the closer you get down to the end grower, that local salesperson, that's as personal as you're going to get. He actually knows that customer, and so what we think's always been missing there is, how do you get the tools from a brand to those people? And so I think, yes, there's some great tech tools, as Sean alluded to, but in ag being so personal, and there's 200 to 500,000 growers that really matter.
Right.
I think we can do it on a much more personal level, and really that's why we built CropStream.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, a lot of this talk and a lot of the digital tools are about the top of the funnel, but local and real personal is where you live.
Mm-hmm.
That's always been a challenge for some of the media planners and media buyers. It's it's just a tough gig to get that deep. Maybe on broadcast side, because you have so many radios, the radio stations, you can get to that level. But talk a little bit about that aspect of the power of you can with sales and marketing at a local level.
Yeah, as from the brand perspective, they make all kinds of great creative content, support materials, and what we see actually out in the field is that sales agronomist whose job it is really to educate the grower about those products and what they do. He is constantly fumbling for the right piece of content or information to share with a grower. It used to be sell sheets, but nobody carries paper with them anymore. And then we tried Dropbox, but that confused growers. They really don't have email, so you can't. It's hard to push them an email when they're out in the field and they need that information now. And so to think about it in a way of how can we do this from a mobile friendly perspective and be able to go out and find and source the branded content I need to support a sales. And then me as a local agronomist, I can put my own personal message on top of that piece of content. We think that has huge benefits and power out in the field, because that's the way that sales process is happening now. We've just taken what's been a face to face and with a paper sell sheet and turned it into a mobile friendly app.
I just launched another poll about digital technology and what might intrigue some of the people in the audience. There's AI and chatbots and Facebook and their Libra cryptocurrency. I don't know where they're going, but if anybody can do it, Facebook, I guess.
You should have bought your crypto 2 weeks ago.
I bet, I'm sure. Just to get a pulse on what people are thinking about and interested in. And messaging is what I love about mobile messaging, whether it's in a crop stream environment, whether it's SMS or even RCS. What I love about it is that it is right in the pocket of the grower, the target. Everybody's carrying their phone. The stats are staggering. It's like 95% of farmers carry the phone with them into the field. It's with them as much as their car keys in their truck. So if you're going anywhere, you want to be on that phone. Now you don't want to take advantage of that and lose your connection by over messaging or provide something that isn't of value. So that's always the question. How much can you get into their phone without losing them ultimately?
The guideline I give people is treat your digital messaging interactions like you would a face-to-face interaction. If you're showing up every 5 minutes shouting at somebody, they're probably gonna be pretty turned off by that. So, but if you're showing up at the right time or right before that customer needs something with relevant, helpful information, they'll welcome as many of those messages as makes sense. So for example, the dicamba season's winding down here. To put out some helpful information about that would be very timely and probably very welcome by a lot of growers.
Another area of interest is artificial intelligence, and I think some of the problem with AI right now is that we're assigning the term to things that really aren't artificially intelligent. So a chatbot inherently doesn't have artificial intelligence. It's not doing anything other than what it was programmed to do. But as we get into what artificial intelligence offers and can be, it should improve. It can, if allowed, improve all of these things, right?
That's a great point. James, there's a difference between an algorithm or an if-then statement and, artificial intelligence. But where I think in the ag space, we may see some AI at some point begin to make some waves is with IBM Watson. So they actually own weather.com as well. So so when you think about, using weather patterns and all sorts of other inputs that to start applying an AI component on top of that, not only for our marketing but for lots of areas for our business, that could be pretty powerful.
Totally second that. I think there's some tools out there that a lot of marketing companies could start to utilize. One that seems very interesting to me is a product called Unanimous AI. They have a swarm platform, which gives much better and more accurate results than surveys or focus groups. And they've used it in politics and sports, and it's really showing tremendous results. So to think about how we could apply that type of technology to the vast amount of decisions that we have to make as marketers in ag, or even the decision farmers have to make in production, I think would be very interesting.
I was thinking about AI back in about 10 years ago, related to weather. We had a company that wanted to post certain messages on our site based on whether it was raining or not. And the AI was, I had a trafficker checking the weather and he'd turn on zip codes and turn them off in real time. Well, as in real time that he told me he did it in real time. We're not sure if that actually took place, but I do like the technological way of accomplishing that better than maybe relying on one human being, for sure. Well, we're coming to an end here, and I do totally appreciate. I want to thank Sean and Craig for joining me on this Rooster Wake Up webcast. I hope we took digital to another level for everyone. I do have one final poll, just asking about the effectiveness. We do plan on doing more of these, so be on the lookout for future invitations. Otherwise, I just thank you very much, and hope you have a great day and a great upcoming holiday week. This is the time where we're getting ready for the big push at the end of the year, so take advantage. And thank you very much.
Thanks, James.
Thanks, James.